leading us this morning. Last week, they did such a good job that I went to the band and I said to them, hey, man, y'all did a great job today, and I would love to have y'all lead again. And they said, yeah, sure, great. And then about half of them said, oh, by the way, we're out of town next week. So that was the band with some replacements and moving parts in there. We appreciate them leading us in worship. If you got a Bible, I want you to turn to Luke chapter 19. We are getting closer and closer to this, to the end. Oh, I'll try to start here. I'm going to move that so I don't run over it. And somebody's guitar pick. We are getting closer and closer to finishing up this series on God's number one draft pick. The kind of people that God looks for in the people to make up His kingdom, His team. And so we have been talking through these, and we're continuing today. We're going to be in Zacchaeus, or in Luke chapter 19. We're going to talk about Zacchaeus. I want to read the first three verses. What we're going to do is we're going to just kind of walk through this passage, and we're going to read through it. And I want to encourage you today, for the purposes of this sermon, set aside the fact that you know all the rest of this story. And try to hear this story for the first time. And so as we read the first three verses, I want you to not think about that you know what happens at the end. You know what happens in the end of these verses. And you know what Zacchaeus does. I want you just to kind of set that aside and let your mind walk through this story. Walk through it with me and try to experience what Zacchaeus must have felt. Try to think about what the people who are standing around Zacchaeus, when all of these things happen, the fact that they're looking up at him and seeing what's happening, try to experience what they must have been thinking. And so we're going to kind of talk through this story and help us to re-examine and maybe hear the message of Zacchaeus again as if for the first time. Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. We are still in Jericho. We talked about Jericho last week, that this is not exactly the Jericho of the Old Testament. It's actually built a couple of miles away from the Jericho of the Old Testament. But it did cost the man who built this city, cost him his son, just as been prophesied by Joshua when the city was destroyed. And so Jericho sits over by the Jordan River, and it is a major thoroughfare. It's a major crossing point for a lot of trade. And so the city of Jericho, as we said last week, was a great place if you were a beggar to sit by the roadside in the city of Jericho. Well, it is also if you are a tax man, and your job is to levy taxes on customs on goods that are coming into the country, then Jericho is a great place to be. Because there is a lot of materials coming into the nation of Israel through the border, through the city of Jericho. And so the person who is in charge of the tax collecting there has got a great job. Why is it so great? Because basically what a tax collector does is a tax collector would write to Rome, would go to Rome and would say to the Romans, we will collect X number of dollars in taxes. And Rome would take they would take the highest offer and they would give that person the job. And so Zacchaeus had at some point gone to Rome or sent a message to the Roman leaders and said, I will collect X number of dollars in taxes from this area. Now, what happens is, he goes through his work. If he collects X number of dollars in taxes, that's how much he has to send back to Rome. Guess what happens to anything above X? That goes in his pocket. And so, Zacchaeus is most likely a very wealthy man. And what Zacchaeus probably did, it says he's the chief tax collector. Probably what Zacchaeus did was when he sent to Rome and said, hey, I will pay you this much in taxes. He probably then came back and sold basically a license to other men to sell or to collect taxes also. Because it says he's the chief. He's the head guy. And so he is selling off licenses to the guys below him. So he probably doesn't even have to work very hard. He's got a good life. Only problem is, nobody likes a tax collector. Well, we don't even like a tax collector, right? Well, I mean, anybody, do you know anybody that works for the IRS? Anybody that would actually admit that they work for the IRS? No. None of us do. We don't like paying taxes. I always say, I want to pay every single penny of taxes that I am absolutely responsible for. But I don't want to pay a penny over it. And none of us do. Well, can you imagine if you're paying taxes not to a government that is of your people, but you're paying taxes to an occupying force? And that's exactly what Zacchaeus is collecting for. Zacchaeus is collecting for a nation that has occupied his very own people. And so he is a tax man, but he is a tax man who is a traitor to his own people in the eyes of those around him. Because he was despised by the people of Jericho. And because he was despised, as he knows that Jesus is coming to Jericho, he wants to see him. And he's trying to find a way. He's probably running here and there, looking for a place. And he desperately wants to see Jesus. But nobody will let him through. Who wants to be the one that steps aside to let the chief tax collector step up and see Jesus? Nobody does. The situation for Zacchaeus looks desperate. He desperately wants to see Jesus. And you have to wonder why. Tax collectors were known as sinners. They were not the religious kind of people. But he desperately wants to see Jesus. I want to tell you, around you today, everywhere that you go, there are people that want to see Jesus. There are people that you don't think of that want to see Jesus. There are people like Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector, probably known for being one of the worst sinners in Jericho. But he wants to see Jesus. There are people around you, everywhere you go, that want to see Jesus. And a question for every one of us is, do they get to see him? Zacchaeus had the privilege of Jesus coming into the city that he lived in. He had the privilege of being able to have Jesus walking down the street. The people around you today do not have that privilege. But I'll tell you what they do have. They have you and me. Folks, you might be the only Jesus that somebody ever sees. You may be the only Bible that someone ever reads. But what are they reading? What are they seeing? Because there are people around you who desperately want to see Jesus. And they hear that you go to church. They hear that you're a Christian. And they know they can't walk out on their street and see Jesus walking down the street. But they know that you're a Christian. And you carry the title, Christ's man. And so they watch you. What are they seeing? Are they seeing something worth following? Or are they seeing something that they want to just walk away from? Let's read verse 4. So our tax man, it says, he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Why did Zacchaeus want to see Jesus so bad? Was he just curious? Was he just wondering, what's this Jesus guy all about? Well, I'll tell you, I don't think that's it. Why? One, because he ran. And in this culture, men did not run. Daryl still doesn't like to run. In their culture, men did not run. Why? It was not dignified. Okay? They didn't go to the gym and play pickup basketball because it wasn't dignified. And because, also they wore what looked like we would call a dress. They had robes. It was kind of harder to run. You looked funny when you ran. And so men didn't run. And so the simple fact that he runs ahead tells us that right now Zacchaeus has got to be more than just curious about who Jesus is. That he is desperate to see him. But then he does something that's even less dignified. He climbs a tree. I mean, you think men don't run? Men definitely don't climb trees. You just don't do it. And the fact that he runs and he climbs a tree says that Zacchaeus is desperate to see Jesus. He wants to see Jesus more than he cares about what people think about him. And so he runs ahead and he climbs a tree. And in verse 5, it says, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I'm going to stay at your house today. Man, what must have gone through Zacchaeus' head? When Jesus walks down the road, you can imagine Jesus walking down the road, and he stops and he looks up and he says, hey, Zacchaeus, get down here. I'm going to your house. I love it. Jesus is so comfortable, he invites himself. He doesn't even wait. He doesn't say, Zacchaeus, we got to talk, and then wait for Zacchaeus to go, well, do you want to go to my house and have lunch? Jesus just says, I'm going to your house. And, I don't know if Zacchaeus is married or not, but his wife, when she heard that, was probably freaking out, worried that the house wasn't clean. Zacchaeus wants to see Jesus. What's amazing to me is Jesus wants to meet Zacchaeus. One of the worst of sinners. A traitor to his own people. And Jesus wants to see him. Jesus wants to go hang out with somebody that the good people didn't want anything to do with. I mean, this is a man who is part of the system beating down the common man. Now, this is a man who has no respect for God or his faith. But Jesus wants to see him. And he wants to go have lunch with him. He wants to go to his house and hang out. Verse 6 tells us the reaction of the common man. Verse 6 says that Zacchaeus, he came down at once, and he welcomed him gladly. Zacchaeus jumps down out of the tree, and he says, yes, please. And there's hope for this man, Zacchaeus, to have a change. Verse 7 tells us what the common people thought. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. The crowd is upset that Jesus would be the guest in the home of such a despicable man. Jesus is going to the home of a person nobody liked. He is going to the home of a person that everybody talked about. Everybody probably thought of Zacchaeus as not just a traitor to his people, but he was probably called a drunkard, a horrible person. Everybody hated him. And this is where Jesus is going for lunch. Denise and I had not been here very long, and John Garrett and his wife invited us out to eat after a Sunday morning. And so we went on Sunday, we went to Miguelito's, and it was packed. I think most of y'all were there. Well, we go in and we're looking, and they seat us at a table. And because we got there after most of you, the only seat left in the place was right in front of the bar. Well, John very nicely, you're going to laugh this one, okay? John very nicely says, oh, Grant, Denise, y'all sit over here. I didn't even think about it. I go and sit down, and as soon as I sit down, John whips his phone out. And I'm thinking, and then I looked behind me and I went, oh, you sorry, Don. He said, yeah, now you can never fire me. Because if you do, I'm going to show this picture. Well, John, I just told the story anyway. Well, you know, what would you do if one day you were scrolling through Facebook and you saw a picture of your pastor with a whole big selection of liquor bottles behind him? Some of you would be very offended. You'd probably be even more offended if there was one in front of you. That's the kind of house that Jesus went to. Jesus went to the house of a known sinner. And the common people, they're all mad. How dare you? How dare he go? What would you say? How would you respond? How would you respond if you saw on Facebook a party and there was a picture of me or Ryan or John or one of our deacons at a party where there were a bunch of people drinking? How would we respond? Because that's where Jesus is going. He's going to the home of a sinner. Well, let's finish reading verses 8 through 10. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." I want to say, it says, if I have, that is written in such a way that it is assumed to be true. Basically, Zacchaeus is saying, since I have cheated people, I'm going to pay them back. I just want to make sure you catch that. That Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Crowds are grumbling. Jesus goes. We don't know how long, we don't know all of the conversation that has happened. But at some point, Zacchaeus stands up and says, this is what I'm going to do. Jesus, I'm going to give away half my possessions to the poor. If anybody that I have wronged, I'm going to pay them back 4 times as much. I want to just tell you that 4 times as much, that is way more than the law requires. He is not saying, I'm going to just kind of barely meet the standards of the law. Zacchaeus is saying, I'm going to jump way over them. And now some people might read this. This is one of those things where you might read this passage and you may think, oh, Zacchaeus has received salvation because of these things. Because right after he says them, Jesus says to him, salvation has come to this household. And you might read this and go, oh, I think that what Jesus is saying is, because Zacchaeus has done that, that's why he's saved. No. For one, Zacchaeus hasn't done anything. All he's made is a promise. I promise that I'm going to give away half of my possessions. I promise that I'm going to do these things. Well, we know that a promise is it's not really very good, right? Until it happens. And he can say all he wants that he's going to do those things. There's nothing proven until he goes out and does it. He doesn't receive salvation because he says he's going to do these things. His words simply demonstrate what has happened in his heart. His actions are demonstrating what has happened in his heart. In the book of James, James says, you say you have faith without works. He says, show me your faith without works, and I will show you my faith by my works. So what James is saying to those who are saying that, yes, I have faith, I'm a believer, I'm a follower of Jesus, but I don't have anything to back it up. All I have is my words. James says to them, show me, demonstrate, prove it to me. And he says, but I'll prove it to you by my works. It doesn't say that he is saved by those. But he says, my actions demonstrate the truth of what has happened in my heart. And for Zacchaeus, these words are doing just that. These words are demonstrating what God has done in his heart. They're demonstrating that he has changed, that there's something different. And it is because of that change that Jesus sees that he says salvation has come. Well, what about us? You may not be the chief of sinners, but you're a sinner. You know, as you read this story, you might gravitate to one side or the other. You might gravitate, you might look at this story and you may be feeling like, man, I am Zacchaeus. I desperately want to see Jesus. Oh, I want to see Jesus. And you're running and you're looking around. And you're looking at people that you know who claim to be Christians and you're watching them and you're seeing, you know, who is Jesus? And you may be one of the people in a crowd that says, Jesus, how did you go to that man's house? Or maybe you're somewhere else. Maybe you're standing on the sidelines watching, thinking, I wish I had the courage that Zacchaeus has. I wish I had the courage to stand up and to climb a tree, to do whatever it takes to meet Jesus. But I don't. So I just stand in the back. Zacchaeus had the courage to run when nobody else would. And because of that, he met Jesus. And he experienced life change. A change that only God can bring. Are you willing to run to meet Jesus? Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, Lord, I pray that as we continue our worship this morning, Father, I pray that we would be willing to run to meet you. Lord, that we would be willing to climb a tree. And Father, that we wouldn't be in the crowd looking down our noses at others around us. But Father, that we would recognize that we need you. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. As we stand and sing together, I want to challenge you to come to answer God's call in your life. You know, again, I don't know where you are in that story, but you do.